have a story of the Sidhe. The Sidhe are of the fairy world, the Fae. It's a story that comes from the Celtic lands, Scotland and Ireland, and they believe in fairies there. And all the beings that come, that live, that are part of the Fae. Now, there are rules about being with the Fae if you're a person, and you have to know these rules, for if you will have dealings with beings of an older race, then it is best that you learn to play by their rules. Well, the people of the Sidhe, being of the fairy world, you have to know what you're doing when you go to the fairy world. In the gloaming, we would call that the dusk time, when the light is dropping and it isn't yet night and it's past day. But in the gloaming, there came walking two women of the Sidhe. There, along the path that lay above the sea, and on one side of that path was a sheer drop to the rocks, and the surf's boom and the gulls cry. And one of the women looked up and said, "What be there upon the path?" And the other stepped forth, knelt down and pulled back a bit of the bundle and said, "It's a bairn. It's a human babe." We're in Scotland. So what is the name for a bairn? For a human babe, it is a bairn. It is a human babe. And there's nothing that the people of the Fae like better than to find a babe and to bring it in to their world with them, the world of the fairy folk. And there they will play with that babe, and the babe will grow up and be part of the fairy world then. Well, the two women, they looked up and down the path, and seeing none, one reached down and picked up the bairn and held it close, and the two walked off with the babe. Now soon there came, sailing outside the rocks where it was safe, a fisher boat with two men in it. They were heading home, you see, to the village where they lived, and one looked up and said, "What be that upon the rocks?" "'Tis a bird, man. 'Tis a bird fallen." "Nay, 'tis too great in size to be a bird. It is a human being and needing our help." "Why, man, you not be going in. The rocks, the boat." But over went the tiller, and in came the boat, and they moored it and walked up. And there they found, fallen from the path to the ledge, they found a young lass. Daft and dazed she was. Her senses were not in her mind, and so they brought her down. And they put her in the fisher boat, and they brought her home to the village where they lived. And there, all night, the women tended this young lass. And in the morning, her senses came back to her. And she said, "My bairn, bring me my bairn. 'Tis all I have, you know, from my husband. He was lost at sea a year ago." "'Twas no bairn with thee, lass. Mayhap he tumbled from thine arms when you fell from the path to the ledge and was lost at sea." "No, I put him safe upon the path before I stepped off for water. My babe is there still. And so too from the village walked a long way to the next village and back, but none could be saying of a bairn, for none had seen and none had heard. Thank you. So she stayed, the lass stayed with them, that village. And on the third day, when she was strong again, she began her journey, searching for her bairn. And she walked from village to village and knocked at door and called at hovel, but none could be saying, none had seen. And she came upon a gypsy caravan. Oh, they are well-traveled people, are the gypsy, the Rom. And lass knew better than to walk up to their campfire without a welcome. And so she went in the even, and she stood just at the edge of the campfire light. And she waited, and she waited. And then the crone of the crone, the old wise woman, she looked up and said, "Ah, lass, ye be burdened with problem. Come, sit by me," said the crone, "and tell me what it is that burdens ye." And lass, she came, and she told all that had happened, and how she sought her bairn. And the crone said, "Lass, there be no danger in you. Stay with us till the beginning of the week. We will go to the yearly encampment of our people, and there will be one in that encampment. If any will know of your babe, it will be she." And lass stayed with them. And they brought her at the beginning of the week to their great encampment, and they set lass upon a fallen log before the fire. And lass sat, and she watched, and she watched, and she heard all that had happened. And they brought over one in the even. Old she was, ancient of years. Crone she was, and she was deeply schooled in the lore and the wisdom of her people. And there sat the two, hand in hand before the fire, and they spoke of what they had loved in life, and what they had lost in life, and what they had learned in life. And at midnight, up got Crone, and 3 times round the fire she went, and each time some dust from the pouch she carried went upon the flame, and there was smoke, and there was mist, and there were shadows that came to play, and there were words too, if you had the ear. And when 'twas done, and when 'twas clear, came Crone to take lass's hand. "Give up thy quest, lass. Thy bairn is taken in with the she, and what is human that goes into the fairy world is not like to come out again. But can you not cast spell to protect me to bring my bairn back. Lass, I cannot be commanding the Shay. My knowledge goes to the beginning of man, but their wisdom goes to the beginning of the world. I have no power or the Shay, but lass, I know you will go on. I will cast spell to ward you from, keep you from danger, from earth and air, and fire and water. And when 'twas done, then came Crone to take Lass's hand, and from the deep of the dark till the dawn time, Crone told Lass all she knew of the She, how for all their power they hath not the power to make of their own, but must gather from those who can make. And if Lass were to buy her way into the fairy world, she would need something rich and rare beyond compare. And Lass knew it was two things she'd be needing. One to buy her way into the fairy world, and one to buy her bairn out. And so, when the morrow came, the Rom, the gypsy folk, they built Lass a shelter, for they would be gone this day, and the Lass would stay. And they are well-meaning people in their own way, are the gypsy folk. And so, on that day, when the shelter was built, then all of the Rom were off, gone with the wind. And Lass busied herself about the shelter they built. And she fell asleep thinking of all the things rich and rare beyond compare of which she had heard. And in the morning, when she wakened, there were still two things in her mind. And one was the gold-stringed harp of Rad, and the other was the white cloak of Nixon. And with the bag that they left, Lass went down to the shore, and she clambered over the rocks all the day in the broiling sun, and gathering eider down from the nests of the ducks that nested there. And when her bag was fair and full, all the day she worked, and the sun did not broil her. The rocks did not cut her feet. The tide did not pull at her, for she was protected by the spells of the Crone. And when her bag was fair and full, back she came to her shelter, and all the rest of the day she wove and she wove and she wove until she had a cloak all of eider down, and it shimmered like sun upon the sea. Then she cut her hair. She had never cut it in all her life. All beautiful and gold it was, and she took pride in it, but now she cut it. Short she cut it. And she took strands, and she began to embroider a ring of golden vine all round that shimmering sea of a cloak. And when 'twas done, she rolled it and put it by, safe. Then down she went to the seashore, and she walked and she walked and she walked, until she found the bones of some great sea beast, coughed up by the flood of the ocean, and bleached white in the sun like old ivory. And she gathered her needs and brought them back to her shelter. And there was some of her hair that she had cut, she bound those bones into a frame, and with more hair, she strung that frame with her own hair. And when 'twas done, and when 'twas tuned, and when 'twas played, the seabirds did soar upon the magic of the music of that harp. Then, with bundles too, she went by highway and byway, by open way and secret way, till she came to the place of the entrance of the fairy world that the crone had spoken of. And she hid herself behind the brush, and she saw them all go in, and as they walked past, she saw them well. Tall they were, and lithe, and lean, and they walked with the spirit of the cat inside. They were the she going into the fairy world. And when the lass had passed her, lass got ready. For crone had said, "Let them all go in, lass. There will always come one, hurrying late as ever. It is she you must confront." And when that woman of the she came hurrying along, pulling at her clothes and adjusting things and saying, "Why am I always the last one? Why am I always the last one?" And when that woman came toward her, lass stepped out with her bundles too. "What do you hear, human? You be in danger, you know." But lass said nothing, only opened the cloak of eider down and saw the woman's eyes go to it. "What will you take for that cloak, human? I'll give you gold, all you want." "Nay, woman, 'tis not for sale. Take me into the fairy world with you, and I will give you the cloak." And the woman of the she brought her into the fairy world, and when she was well and truly in their power, they turned on her. All of the she is human. Kill her, kill her. But lass said nothing, only opened the cloak and handed it to the woman of the she who had brought her in. And she stepped back with her bundle while they all gathered around to admire that cloak. And she saw in the back of that hall, in the darker shadows, she saw a great personage upon a great chair, and she knew him to be the king of that she. And she walked his way. "What do you hear, human? You be beyond help, you know." But lass said nothing, only unwrapped her bundle and held the harp. "What have you there, human?" "It's a harp." "Oh, lass, now I've played many a harp, and I've seen many a more." But lass said nothing, only plucked the cord from that harp. So his hand reached out. "Well now, I might take a fancy to that harp. Hand it over, lass, that I might try its chords." "Nay, king, the chords need no trying. I made it with my own hands. I bound it with my own hair. I tuned it with my own ear. The chords need no trying. And to make the matter clear, she plucked the cord. Gold was brought and heaped around her ankles. Name your price, lass. I've a fancy for that harp. Nay, king, 'tis not for sale. Give me my bairn that your women have brought here, and I will give you the harp. Oh, no, that's not a price I'm willing to pay, says the king. But lass said nothing, only plucked the cord. Well, lass, she saw his hand reach out, and her bairn was brought and put in the king's arm. Well, lass, I've a fancy for the trade. Give me the harp. I'll give you your bairn. Nay, king, give me my bairn first, then I'll give you the harp. And lass, to make the matter clear, plucked the cord and said, Nay, king, give me my bairn first, I will give you the harp. And he saw his arm reach her bairn forth. And with one arm, lass brought her bairn in, and with the other hand, she held out the harp to the king of the Shee, and stepped back with her bairn, while the king of the Shee sat deep in his chair and began to play with all the magic of the music of that harp. And all the Shee stood transfixed at the wonder of the sound. And the lass, she walked out of the fairy world with her bairn and went home. She went to the village of the fisher folk who were kind to her. And there she grew old in years and in grace and in wisdom. And it was always said of she and her bairn, who grew to be a forthright young man, that they bore the luck of the Shee. Now from time to time, lass would find a bundle on her stoop, and she would bring it in and laugh. She knew it. It was the harp to be restrung. And through the years, that gold-stringed harp turned to one of silver strings, and played all the more mellow for that. Or so I did hear this tale from George Nicolaiotis, who was a wondrous Scottish storyteller. And that is the end of that tale.